Earthbound by Artemis Greenleaf. Chapter 10. Henk. I don't understand why Granwell's vendetta against the Joyces was more important than helping us out. It was 500 years ago. Why couldn't she just let it go already? How could such a famous pirate be so useless? I had no idea how to find Rodney Aldridge and observe him. If I waited until he got to the farm, it would be too late. I felt defeated before I even started. Maybe I could talk to Connie. Since she was closer to my age, she might understand and be on my side. I went out to the barn to look for her. "Connie," I called out. "Hello, Skylar," she said, popping up from behind a small partition. "Blimey, you didn't half scare me." I looked at her bushy red hair tied back in a low ponytail, and her long green dress and petticoat. I always thought that it was strange, since she lived in a barn with a horse. She was English, and she had told me how her soldier father had been killed during the colonial rebellion in America. She and her mother came to live on the farm with her grandparents when Connie was 5. She grew up here with her grandfather teaching her all about horses. Neem was her special horse, a rescue horse Connie had nursed back to health. "Sorry," she said, smiling. She motioned for me to come over to where she was. Neem was lying in the stall, her mane elaborately braided. She stood up and shook herself, undoing most of Connie's work. "Connie, could I ask you something?" "Course you can." "Thanks, Then I chickened out. What if she thought I was overreacting too? So I said, "You know, you've never told me how you died." "You came to ask me that?" "Well, I've been thinking about ghosts a lot lately," I said. It wasn't entirely untrue. She studied my face for what felt like a very long time, as if she was trying to figure out why I was really at the barn. I kept my thoughts shielded from her. "Very well." She turned away from me and started scratching Neem's shoulder. "After all, I do know how you died." "Things were fine until I turned 15. Protestants and Catholics were still fighting each other. Groups of men disguised themselves with bedsheets and roared at night. Sometimes they tore down fences. Sometimes they attacked people. In this part of Ireland they were called the White Boys. To some they were freedom fighters, to others they were terrorists. Point of view is a funny thing." She twirled a loose bit of hair around her finger. "The dark and chill of winter was closing in, and soon it would be my birthday. I thought turning 16 would be some magical transformation. It was a transformation all right, just not what I had in mind. When I came in from the stables that evening, I found Mother had made my favourite, lemon curd cake. Warm potato boxty was on the stove, along with some soda bread with currants. The whole house was divinely perfumed with potato, bread, and lemon. I'd already forgotten how most things smelled. I wondered if Connie remembered lemons the way I remembered strawberries. After I cleaned myself up for dinner, I came into the kitchen. A small box with a bit of silk ribbon around it sat on my plate. My hands were shaking as I slipped off the pink ribbon and opened the box. Resting on blue velvet was a bright silver cloak pin in the form of a Celtic horse. Actually, it was 3 horses in a circle, with their legs intertwined. Knotwork formed the outer border. I thought it was beautiful. But then I remembered that Celtic horses are a symbol of fertility. I did not like the direction this party was heading. "You are almost 16. It's time you thought about getting married," my grandfather said. I could scarcely believe what he had just told me. Connie stopped talking. Her shoulders slumped. The loose section of hair slipped off her finger, but she didn't seem to notice. I couldn't imagine getting married, much less at 16. So that was it then. I was just another piece of livestock to be auctioned to the highest bidder, sold like the prize pig at the fair. I asked who the lucky bridegroom was. Turns out they'd arranged for me to marry a man almost 3 times my age. He was a wealthy magistrate called William Winthrop, who would keep me dressed in the finest silks and provide me with my very own servant. Connie picked up a dirt clod and threw it. It thunked against the wall and exploded into dust. I suddenly felt shivery, like something bad was about to happen. I wanted to go back to the house, back to the security of Una. I didn't want to be dressed in silk and have servants. I wanted to train horses. Grandfather told me the blessed event was to take place next month, after the new year. I couldn't speak. I couldn't cry. So I ran out to the barn, to my best and only friend. I was sitting in Neem's stall, sobbing, when the dogs started barking. At first I didn't think too much of it, but then I heard men shouting. I smelled the smoke, almost as soon as I heard the popping of burning straw. The horses got restless in their stalls, started snorting, calling to one another. I opened stall doors and tried to shoo as many of them out as I could. Some ran, but some were too terrified to move. I had to get Neem out. She danced nervously around her stall, whinnying and blowing, but refusing to leave. I could hardly see from the tears. Smoke stung my eyes and burned my lungs. My head was throbbing, and I felt dizzy. I shouted at Neem to get out, but I don't think she could hear me. I grabbed a rope and tried to put it around her neck, and she was too skittish. I stumbled in the straw and fell. The last thing I remember was the sound of Neem screaming and the smell of burning linen as my dress caught fire. The white boys had finally gotten round to us, and I didn't even get to taste the lemon curd cake. A bitter smile floated across her lips. "I'm so sorry. But what made you stay behind?" I thought somehow I could get justice, but there was none to be had. Now I'm just trapped. Connie swung herself gracefully onto Neem's back. The mare whinnied and trotted through a stone wall to the outside. Talking to Connie had only made me feel worse, so I thought it would be better not to talk to anyone. Maybe I could think up a way to observe Rodney Aldrich if I just spent some time away from the farm and on my own. It was only 7:30, so there was at least half an hour of daylight. I went outside and started walking away from the sea towards the crags and bogs. I wanted to walk. Gliding took concentration and I needed to think. I wasn't paying much attention to where I was going. I felt a cold shock of energy in my feet and ankles, and it made me stumble and stop short. I looked down. I saw a pair of legs, outstretched goat legs. "Hey, which way you going, you big clumsy lummox?" A gruff voice from above the legs snapped. I looked at the hooves and hairy limbs. Hairy legs were attached to hairy haunches. Hairy haunches were attached to a man's waist and chest, and arms and head. A white string ran from his side and up his chest where it split into a Y at his throat. Each arm of the Y disappeared into an ear. Earphones? I was gobsmacked. I'd never seen such a creature. "Oob," I said, highly intelligent. "Oob? You go falling over folk minding their own business and the best you can say is oop. What about pardon me, or I'm sorry?" "Right, sorry. I'm very sorry. Who are you?" You just didn't learn any manners before you died, did you, Ween?
I didn't mean to be rude. I've just never seen...
An Urisk? Aye, that's what I am. And I'm trying to listen to a podcast if you don't mind, he grouched.
Never mind.
I started to glide away. I could just ask Una about Urisks later, if he was going to be so nasty, and maybe he was dangerous. I heard a tsk and a sigh behind me. Something's obviously troubling you, lass. Come back here and tell old Hink about it. I stopped and looked at him. What could a half-goat know about Haunted Planet and parasites and Rodney Aldrich? Come on then, he said, patting a stone next to him. Talking to him probably wouldn't help, but I was tired of being on my own. I went back to where he was sitting. He had removed the earbuds after some shifting and scratching and tucked them away somewhere. I was afraid to know where. I thought it was rude to stare, so I examined the pebbles until he got settled. So, I said, your name's Henk then? Henk is what you can call me. I'm Skylar. Pleased to make your acquaintance, he smiled at me. His eyes were a dark greenish black, like deep water. Jagged teeth filled a crooked mouth, and his nose was bulbous and pockmarked. He was horrid ugly, but those dark eyes were kind. We both looked up as some small rocks rolled down the hill. A flicker of shadow passed over us. Must be birds. Seabirds are everywhere round here. Henks's nose wrinkled. Do you smell that? Like something dead? He asked. No, I don't smell anything. Ever. I sat next to him and said, You aren't from round here, are you? No, clever clogs, I'm not. I'm from the Highlands. But I travel. Now, Bairn, what's the trouble? I laughed. What could be more ridiculous than sitting in the middle of nowhere talking to a half-man, half-goat about fake psychics and ghostly cuttlefish? Still, sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger. It doesn't seem to matter so much what they think of you. So I told him about Haunted Planet and Rodney Aldrich and parasites and Granwal and Sheridan. Probably more than he wanted to know. But he did ask. So that's the problem. I'm supposed to watch Aldrich, but I don't know where to find him, I finished. Is that all then? Easy peasy. He took out a notebook computer and started typing. I hadn't noticed his rucksack, mostly hidden by the rocks. It made me feel better about the earphones. After a minute, he said, Let's go to the top of this hill. I can't get a signal down here. I glided, and he jumped, he was after all half-goat, up the stones to the top of the hillock. He hopped to the top of the hill, then sat down and started typing again. That's got it. He typed and tapped on the computer. After a few minutes, he said, Cambridge, England, town centre. That's where Aldrich's company, HP Productions, will be found. At 1801 Trumpington Street. That's bleeding deadly, Henk. Thanks. Just one small problem. How do I get to 1801 Trumpington Street in Cambridge? Dinna be a daffy, take the lays. He was getting grouchy again. But which ones? Where are they? Is there a map or something? Something didn't add up. Hadn't Connell said that the ley lines were spirit highways? How do you know about the ley lines? I thought they were just for ghosts. Ugh, who's gone and filled your head with such rubbish? The ley lines existed long before you lot. Bloody humans always think that everything is about them. Henk shook his head. No, of course there are maps, but I haven't a printer out here, have I? So you'll just have to look and try and remember. His shaggy eyebrows beetled as he scowled. More tapping and typing. I waved my arms uselessly at a couple of large black flies that appeared and buzzed around Hanks's computer. They ignored me completely, like I was a ghost or something. "See here, then," he said, pointing to a map of the British Isles. "You'll have to go up to Knocknarea to catch the Great Pyramid lay southeast to the St. Michael lay, where you'll turn left and go northeast to Cambridge." "Oh, I see." Hank sighed. "You dinna know how to navigate the lays, do you?" "No." I looked down. Was I the stupidest person in the universe? "Well, ley lines cross, there's a purple glow. The bigger the crossing line, the stronger the glow. St. Michael's will be the biggest line you'll cross. You'll know it when you see it. Don't you worry. It's easy." His tone softened. "Thank you, Hank, really. I guess you'll be wanting to get back to your podcast then." "Aye." I turned to go. "Skylar." I turned to face him. "A word of advice, lass. Your name has power. Not everyone is so kind and helpful as me. Be careful who you tell your name to." "I'll do that. Cheers then," I said. "Cheers, and good luck, Queen." I glided back to the farmhouse, wondering why I'd never found such creatures before, and how I could find them again. I marvelled at my stroke of luck, not realising that luck can be good, or it can be bad. Earthbound by Artemis Greenleaf. This work is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivative Works 3.0 United States license. Environmental sound effects used in this podcast were provided by www.freesound.org. Please check artemisgreenleaf.com for details of specific samples used. If you'd like to leave a comment or learn more about the other projects in progress, please go to www.artemisgreenleaf.com.
Dandelion girl, watch her play on a summer's day.